Morning.
Thank you for putting me on.
All right, so you're not happy. I can imagine you're pretty upset about the news over the weekend. Was this a political maneuver or was this well overdue?
Well, I think when you look at it from my constituents' point of view, as well as my own, we see the disparate treatment between Mr. Wagoner, who was asked to resign and honorably did so, and then the sight we saw last week where many of the CEOs from the financial institutions who brought us to the precipice of a global depression were being feted at the White House and told that they would be worked with to get through this difficult time. So I think you can understand why we have a bit of a frustration with the process to date.
In the AIG situation, though, we saw Willemstad got pushed out, Edward Liddy came in, and some suggest, you know what, Rick Wagoner has been at the helm of this institution for a very long time. It's seen 95% of its value lost. Not all of those things are his responsibility. But on the other hand, word is that the concessions with the UAW and the bondholders were not moving as aggressively as the administration would have liked to have seen. Some new blood, some new energy, a new way to shake things up. Is that not a good thing?
Well, as you heard, Fritz is going to take over. So what's going to happen is you're going to have the number two take over. The question that we have is twofold. One, why is it propitious at this point in time with 60 days left between GM's continued survival and bankruptcy to remove the chief executive officer who helped lead much of the restructuring we just heard about from Mike to date? Secondly, we still have the outstanding question of if the original viability plans were not sufficient, 50,000 jobs were not sufficient to show viability. If plants closing and retiree sacrifices were not sufficient, we would like the administration to tell us how many jobs lost in the industries will be sufficient for a viability plan, what the retirees will have to sacrifice to show viability so that goal can be met.
When you look ahead now, they're saying 60 days to restructure. Word is it could be a bankruptcy restructuring with debtor in possession financing. What will that do to the industry?
We continue to believe that bankruptcy is not an option, which is why we continue to ask the administration, and hopefully the president can enlighten us later today, with what specifically they need to see in terms of job losses, in terms of retiree sacrifices from their pensions and health care, that would give them evidence that viability has been attained and that bankruptcy could be avoided.
What about the bondholders? Word is that the bonds are trading at 20 cents on the dollar right now, that there have been concessions with GM as to what they're willing to pay as a combination of cash and equity, but that the bondholders are not willing to get to the number. Is this in some ways, frankly, what I think is a bigger signal to the bondholders than anybody, this decision with Rick Wagoner? And what are you hearing from them? What are you hearing from the company as to why it is that they can't find a mutually agreed upon number? They've known about it for months.
Well, one of the things that we continue to run into, especially on President Gettelfinger's part from the United Auto Workers, is he has to protect his retirees, he has to protect his workers. I think this is why it is unfair to say that he's playing a game of chicken. He has a moral responsibility to do the best he can to protect those people. Now, on the bondholders' part, I think there was some hangover from the GMAC situation where those bondholders who did not participate in the haircut actually made out quite well. So I think that in many ways the analysis that the potential for bankruptcy being out there should hasten the process if it can be hastened at all.
You're upset that the financial institutions that you say, and many argue would agree with you, have led to this financial disaster. Why isn't it the CEOs of those institutions have not been replaced?
You'd have to ask the administration why they felt it was more important to vet them and to offer to cooperate with them than it was to try to do the same with Mr. Wagoner for the next 60 days. That's a question only they can answer.
When you see a meeting like the meeting that occurred on Friday, 14 CEOs, many of them walking out of the meeting talking about their plans, this private-public partnership on the financial institution side here to remove the toxic assets, do you think this is not a good plan toward healing the financial institutions? I mean, you of all people know we need to get some access to some credit and some lending.
Yes, but I think we're going along the TARP plan that Mr. Paulson proposed and then withdrew. You're going to wind up putting up to $1 trillion of taxpayer money into underwriting and potentially, I think, artificially raising the price of many of these toxic assets. You'll have a situation where the investors can win and the taxpayers can lose. I think, again, that's an inequitable situation, and I don't think this is the way to go. I go back to the original proposition that we've had in the past where you should try to break up these companies that are insolvent and reprivatize things such as AIG and get the process moving again, because certainty in the market, certainty of policy, certainty of process is what has sorely been lacking. And if it is not provided, we will continue to muddle through and in many ways wind up like the Japanese in the 1990s.
You know, Representative, I know you pretty well, and I'm watching you today, and you seem today, I think, a little bit more defeated than any other time I've spoken to you. What are your emotions? What kind of conversations are you having with people in Detroit? I mean, explain to people why this is so important to you.
Oh, we aren't defeated at all. The reality is we've been dealt another body blow. We've had them in the past, and all we want is the opportunity to get through it. The one thing that we are frustrated about is not even the disparate treatment at this point so much as it is the uncertainty as to what this administration will accept as in terms of job losses, in terms of what happens to the retirees, so that we can grit our teeth and meet the target. If there is no target to truly be met and a bankruptcy is in our future regardless of what we do, we would also like to know that so that we can then deal with it. We in Michigan generally accept the proposition that this is a painful restructuring. We would like the opportunity to do it.
All right, Congressman McCotter, as always, pleasure seeing you. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
All right, guys, coming up, we're going to take your emails. They've been coming in all morning on Rick Wagoner and the state of the auto industry. Congressman McCotter makes a great point. What are the targets? Will we hear them today at 11 a.m. when the president speaks live? We'll bring you that, of course, when he does speak live at 11 a.m., but we're going to get into that issue in a little bit of a couple minutes. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Don't settle for secondhand information.